Starmer. Is it wise to sell arms to Federal Army?
Saudi Arabia.
Johnson. Circumstance mean we must cut aid. Sir Keir Starmer asked how the government can justify cutting aid to people in Yemen. Boris Johnson's replied that the government has increased aid spending to the highest proportion in the history of our country. He adds that Straightened circumstances mean we must temporarily reduce our aid spending. UK foreign rules on arms sales to Saudi Arabia. The Labour leader says the system on arms sales is not robust and the UK is increasingly isolated in selling them to Saudi Arabia. The PM replies that the government continues to follow the consolidated consolidated guidance on such matters set up by Labour when it was in power. Ready comments, test now or wait, and risk adapt mountain. Sir Robert Trott, the man who oversaw the official forecast and policed the Treasury's financial housekeeping for a decade, is urging caution. The former chairman of the Office of Budget Responsibility told me on Video Force Today program that taxes would have to rise, but that the Chancellor wouldn't go as is too aggressively in case you weaken the recovery. Shortly before stepping down last summer, he recommended the government take a blanket approach to underpin the economy. When the fire is large enough, you spare the water and worry about it later, he said then. By arising a cautious approach to cleaning up the property sports, he underlines how different thinking is to the austerity aftermath of the financial crisis. Austerity. To the austerity aftermath of the financial crisis, the government may have to live with a bigger Sturmer. UK should be a moral force for good. Sir Keir Starmer says Britain should be a moral force for good in the world and calls on the PM to put his aid cuts to a vote in the House of Commons. Boris Johnson says the UK is spending more than virtually any other country in the world on aid. He argues that people in the country think he has got his priorities right. Sir Keir Starmer says the government has halved the international aid to Yemen. He urged the PM to do the right thing, and we consider this urgently. Boris Johnson says the UK is giving £240 million to Yemen this year, and that people should be very, very proud of what we are doing. Johnson, circumstances mean we must cut aid. Sir Keir Starmer asked how the government can justify cutting aid to people in Yemen. Boris Johnson replies that the government has increased the aid, spending to the highest proportion in the history of our country. He asked that Straitened circumstances mean we must temporarily reduce our aid spending. UK should be a moral force for good. Sir Keir Starmer. Sir Keir Starmer.
Sir Keir Starmer.
Sir Keir Starmer. Sir Keir Starmer says Britain should be a moral force for good in the world, and calls on the PM to put his aid cuts to a vote in the House of Commons. Boris Johnson says the UK is spending more than virtually any other country. Boris Johnson says the UK is spending more than virtually any other country in the world on aid. He argues that people in the country think he has got his priorities right. Bedford, PM breaking commitments on Yemen. SNP Westminster leader Ian Bradford says 100,000 people have been killed in the war in Yemen, with many children at death's door. He adds that the government has shamelessly backed the federal government and asked the PM to reserve cuts to international aid. Boris Johnson says that on Monday the government will provide cash support for 1.5 million people in Yemen. Bradford says coronavirus has hit poor countries hardest and asks why the PM is breaking his own manifesto commitment to help the world's poorest. Johnson says the pandemic has placed the strains on the public finance, but the UK is doing everything it can to help Yemen. Manifesto. His own manifesto commitment. Manifesto.
Manifesto.
Breaking his own manifesto commitments. Boris Johnson says the UK is spending more than virtually any other country in the world on aid. Boris Johnson says the UK is spending more than virtually any other country in the world on aid. Boris Johnson says the UK is spending more than virtually any other country in the world on aid. He argues that people in the country think he has got his priority right. Sir Keir Starmer says the government has halved the international aid to Yemen. He urged the PM to do the right thing, and we consider this urgently. Boris Johnson says the UK is giving £240 140 million pounds to Yemen this year, and that people should be very, very proud of what we are doing. Northern Ireland Protocol has damaged the political institutions. Northern Ireland Protocol has damaged the political institution. Starmer. UK should be a moral force for good. Sir Keir Starmer says Britain. Northern Ireland Protocol has damaged the political institutions. Joining by video link, DUP Westminster leader Sir Geoffrey Donaldson says the Northern Ireland Protocol is doing damage to political institutions in Northern Ireland and asks what the PM will do to ensure the nation has unfiltered access to goods from Great Britain. Boris Johnson says the position of Northern Ireland in the UK internal market is rock solid and guaranteed. He adds that the government is working on protecting the market in some areas, including food supply. Joining by video link, DUP Westminster leader Sir Geoff Donaldson.
Sir Geoffrey Donaldson.
Sir Geoffrey Donaldson says the Northern Ireland Protocol is protocol. Joining by video link, DUP Westminster leader Sir Geoffrey Donaldson says the Northern Ireland Protocol is doing damage to political institutions in Northern Ireland and asks what the PM will do to ensure the nation has unfettered access to goods from Great Britain. Unfettered unfettered, not limited by rules or any other controlling influence. Unfettered, not limited by rules or any other controlling influence. Unfettered. What the PM will do to ensure the nation has unfettered access to goods from Great Britain. Boris Johnson says the position of Northern Ireland in the UK internal market is rock solid and guaranteed. He adds that the government is working on protecting the market in some areas, including food supply. We lead better value counselors. counselors. We need better value counselors. Neighbors.
Graham Morris.
Graham Morris. Neighbors Graham Morris calls for a proportional property tax to replace council tax, which he says places an unfair burden on people in the poorest communities. Boris Johnson's replies that what the country needs is councillors who charge you less while providing better service. Neighbors Graham Morris calls for a proportional property tax to replace council tax, which he says places an unfair burden on people in the poorest communities. Boris Johnson replies that what the country needs is councillors who charge you less while providing better service. Will S&P victory be a mandate for another referendum?
Mandate. Mandate for another referendum.
Will SNP victory be a mandate for another referendum?
Will S&P victory be a mandate for another referendum?
Will SNP victory be a mandate for another referendum?
Will S&P victory be a mandate for another referendum? S&P. The S&P MP Patrick Gardner says Scottish Conservatives are sending campaign leaflets arguing that a vote for the Tories is a vote to stop an independence referendum. He asked the PM if that means an SNP victory in the coming elections will be a mandate for another independence referendum. Boris Johnson says most will think it is extraordinary that the SNP are calling for another referendum. PMQs, the Budget One-Cup adds. As Boris Johnson has just a couple more questions from MPs, we are going to pause our coverage of this week's PMQs and turn our attention back to the main events today. The budget statement. Chancellor Rishi Sunak is due to be on his feet in a couple of minutes. Do stay with us. Chancellors can really be tough and generous. Rishi Sunak will keep spending and spending big. The urgent question, whether families and businesses keep receiving state support, has broadly at least been answered. The fellow goes on. The universal credit top-up continues, likely for another 6 months, where the Chancellor's response is less clear and will likely be less complete. It's just how he proposed to achieve another of his stage aims, starting the job of fixing the public finance. There is no intense political pressure to close the yawning gap between what fills the government's coffers and and what it has been spending. Yet Rishi Sunak wants to show his party and the public that he cares about balancing the books at least one day, even contemplating raising tax on business in hard times. But even with Rishi Sunak's apparent love of slick marketing, being tough and generous is a slogan for transparency that rarely comes true.